Let's have a moment of silence for our fallen and founder of the black business in the country, the founder of the African Bank. And while we were meeting here today also, it came to our attention that also another legend, Dingane Thobela, have passed. And we are also aware that one of the icons, the sons of the soil, Dr. Pegu, is also late. And we thought it is then important for all of us this morning to have a moment of silence so that their soul may rest in peace. Can we have a moment of silence? Thank you.
Thank you, President. As we all know that Dr. Semutsonyani was a stalwart in entrepreneurship and ethical business practice. And I hope all of us will honor his legacy by following on his example. I think I would like to start with the first panel. I would like to call on stage our moderator, Ms. Kathy Mutlatlana. She does not need any introduction. Ma'am Kathy is an award-winning TV and radio broadcast journalist. She has worked for many TV and radio stations, among those ENCA, Kaya FM, and I think 702. She's a professional who lights up a room when she enters. Ma'am Kathy, you are welcome. Ma'am Kaya, we come from the beautiful province of Limpopo. Come through. And Ma'am Kathy, I would leave you now to introduce your panel. And she'll start with a session. So we'll take direction from her. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning to everybody in the room. Okay, it sounds like you guys haven't had your morning coffee yet. Let's try that one more time. Good morning. That's a lot better. My name is Kathy Mutlatlana. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning, and I'm going to be moderating this session. We all know what time it is in South Africa, right? It is election time. So I must say, coming to the venue was pretty easy for me this morning. Put it in the GPS, and it gives me directions. Figuring out what to ask these panelists was also quite easy, but the one thing I had to be very mindful of was to pick what I wear very, very carefully. I can't wear red, I can't wear green or gold, I can't wear blue, I can't wear green. So really there aren't many options left, are there? But all of it is a sign of what election season is. That's why some tend to call it silly season. But even though we might be on the crux of what has been described as the most contested election since democratic South Africa, and we get involved with, the mudslinging, and there's a lot of contestation amongst political parties. At the end of the day, we cannot forget that what this is all about is about South Africans and the opportunity to build a better country, and it's a better country for you and I. That's what elections are about. So this morning, we're going to invite the panelists who are different representatives of political parties. We'll give them 3 minutes each to give their opening remarks. And of course, there is a particular theme that we're going to be following in line with the conference of the Black Business Council. So each of them will reflect for 3 minutes for us on 30 years of democracy, progress so far, and plans to accelerate reforms. It'll then be followed by question and answer sessions. They'll have 2 minutes each to respond to the questions. And of course, you are the most important person in the room today. It is your opportunities as members, as stakeholders of the Black Business Council to actually ask the questions that you want these political representatives to answer. So, in no particular order then, you can give them a round of applause at the end. Help me welcome onto stage Mr. Parks Tau, NEC member of the African National Congress, Mr. Velingosini Tlhabisa, president of the Inkatha Freedom Party, Mr. Songezo Zibi, president of Rise Mzansi, Dr. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, who unfortunately is not here yet, and we're going to be hearing from him, of course, later on in the program. Mr. Funzi Ngobeni, who is the Gauteng Premier Candidate of Action South Africa. And of course, representing the UDM, Mr. Mthunzi Ndaba. Let's give him a round of applause as he, Ndaba, apologies. Let's give them all a round of applause, please. Mr. Tau, I see you're creating some social distance there. We don't want it to look like you were othered in the pictures that are going to be taken. And isn't that a story in and of itself, Ntate Tlhabisa? Mr. Tlhabisa is saying that he thought there might be a lady somewhere in between. But that in and of itself is a story, right, of just what the layout of our politics for this election cycle is. So we'll kick it off then on the far left-hand side. We'll start with the UDM representative. And you will be the first to go, sir. I said in no particular order. Okay. Yes, all bets are off. Remember, it's anybody's game if the research is anything to go by. So I'll give you the first opportunity then. 30 years of democracy, progress so far. What do you believe is the progress? But most importantly, what are the plans of the UDM to accelerate the implementation of reforms?
Thank you very much. I was at another event recently, a few days ago, where I was told as UDM, I must know my place. Apparently, we only have 2 seats, so we must know that we must be at the end. And being you, we must know that it's towards the end. So that's why I'm a bit surprised that today I get to speak first. Thank you for the opportunity. I think, yes, you see, it's important. Once you know your place, everything works. So I think that the first thing is to try and get my apology in. The president of the UDM couldn't make it. Some of you would have figured out that I'm not the president of the UDM, Mr. Bantu Holomisa. But I'm happy that he's not here because he'd written a speech that would have taken 30 minutes. And I woke up at 2 a.m. and cut it down to about 15 minutes. And then now I'm told we speak for 3 minutes. So I think it's good that we do this as the people who are running on the ground. So 30 years for me has been divided into 2 sections, really. There was the first 15 years that looked very promising. And then there was the last 15 years that has been completely like a train wreck. We now, because of the second 15, sit on a precipice of a cliff. Things are not working, and I'm not going to go into every detail in the hope that one's going to get an opportunity. But the miracle, though, of all things is that we are on day 34. We haven't had load shedding. Intriguing. So one is not sure whether it's still a problem or not, but you know what? Maybe on the 30th of May it will come back. So we must work on the premise that, you know, we sit in uncertain times. In terms of what to do going forward, there's a lot that needs to be done going forward. It's like a grocery list of sorts. But I think it would start with making sure that as the UDM, because we have such a good track record of attending to issues of anti-corruption, we do say that corruption destroys freedom, but we don't say it as theoreticians, we say it as people who've done it. We don't have a speaker today because our president was the one who laid charges against the speaker. No one else can lay claim to that because he was goaded to go to the police station and lay charges. We know that in terms of the Steinhoff issue, whether Marcus killed himself or not, that's the question. But the fact of the matter is the billions that were stolen by them, again, the UDM was very instrumental in that. SAA Takatso, the UDM was the one that wrote to SCOPA, and we dealt with that. So for me, first is ethical governance related issues. But in terms of employment, for me, that's very important. You need to look at how do we get a national employment policy. I think it is a disaster of huge proportions that 30 years later we don't have an employment policy in this country. It is a disaster that we don't have an industrial policy, and yet people have been telling us about black industrialists. And I've been wondering why I can't see these black industrialists. But actually, we don't even have a policy, so we don't know where to find them. We don't have anything on the future of work or artificial intelligence or, you know, the fourth industrial revolution. It's an opportunity as well because we can quantum leap everybody else and put all of that together. When you talk about productivity and competitiveness, we're a country that has been losing in competitiveness for many years. About 11 years ago, we're number, I think, 44 out of 61 countries. Now we're number 61 out of 63 countries. And unemployment with the highest, inequality with the highest, all of these things. We need to fix those things. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mdwaba. Up next, Mr. Ngobeni.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kathy, and let me greet my fellow panelists and greet all the guests who are here this morning. And thank you for this opportunity. I'm quite grateful that we have been invited here today, not only to share our thinking around the past 30 years, but also to share with you some of the plans that we have as a political party, Action SA, because in 4 weeks' time, we are confident that we will be in government, whether it will be a coalition or we will lead that government. It's going to be decided in 4 weeks' time, and the mandate will come from South Africans. We hold a profound appreciation of this federation and the role that it has played in representing black professionals, black business association, and chambers. So we are quite grateful that we are part of this. Ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you that as Action SA, we have a plan to fix South Africa. But from my point of view, as a premier candidate of Action SA in the province of Gauteng, we have a plan to fix Gauteng. And this plan holds a historic reputation because, Gauteng as a province holds a very significant position because this is where everyone comes. This is where all the migrants from other provinces like ourselves who grew up in Bloemfontein in the Free State, we come and look for opportunities here in Gauteng. But it is also a province that receives close to about 3,000 people each and every month coming from SADC regions and other places. So it's also very important to note that with that said, this province becomes quite key. When we are saying we are going to fix South Africa, we need to start here. We are saying if Gauteng works, South Africa will also work. So we have seen that there's been quite a lot of stagnation in the economy, not only here in Gauteng, but as a country, the economy has stagnated. And we have seen the high level of unemployment. We have seen young people in the main being the victims of this unemployment. So the question will be, what is it that we have to do to turn around the situation? And us in Gauteng, we are of the view that one of the catalysts towards fixing this problem will be to revive our manufacturing industries, will be to ensure that we invest in infrastructure development, roads and logistics, and also obviously on the energy sector as well. But these are issues that we will unpack with you as we go and as we engage on your questions. But as Action SA, we are grateful that we are here, Kathy, and looking forward to the engagement. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ngobeni. Mr. Zibi.
Thank you, Kathy, and good morning to all the delegates. So, on my reflections on the last 30 years are that we've spent most of it, if not all, working out how to divide up the apartheid economy and the post-colonial economy. And that conversation has been about who gets what, because that's just been the conversation about equity ownership and so on, but the structure of the economy has fundamentally remained the same. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that means we have left the structural problems unattended in that time. So we still have the same old sectors. Many of them in real terms have declined in that time. And so we continue to contest a shrinking pie if you consider inflation and the growth of the population. And in how we think we go forward, we need to think about how we attack those structural problems. The third is that black professionals have been trying to get in. This has been the conversation, whether it is about leadership level transformation, boards, executive committees, and so on. The conversation has been about how do black professionals get into this still apartheid and colonial era economy. And that we've also accepted, we believe, modest ambitions and aspirations. We have the politics of alleviation rather than the politics of wealth and prosperity. We're not aiming high enough. And I think we need to aim enough. And fundamentally, a political class that has not been able to get out of this mindset. So we're still having effectively a 30-year-old conversation about the economy and how to transform it. So how do we move forward? I think everyone knows our election slogan is we need new leaders. You can't produce fresh ideas with old thinking and the same old people that have thought about problems in the same old way. That's really, really important. The second thing is that we need to recognize that the basics have fallen apart. Every business operates in a municipality. I'll be surprised if half the room is proud of how municipalities are doing. So we need to get the basics right, local and regional infrastructure so that the economy can function. The third is that we need to think more ambitiously. Currently, I think the IDC and related institutions are spending about 9 billion a year on financing black industrialists. We can lift that up to 100 billion per year. And there are ways to do that. And in the conversation, Kathy, we can talk about it. And that is in patient finance that comes both from development finance institutions and from the fiscus itself. Let me leave it there, and then we can talk.
All right, thank you, Mr. Zibi. Mr. Tlhabisa?
Thank you very much, Kathy. My colleagues in the political space, the delegates in this summit, some call it a silly season, but this should be a sober season. The mistake we will make on the 29th of May will cost us dearly in the next coming 5 years. In reflecting how far our country has gone from 1994, 3 days ago, we're celebrating Freedom Day. Indeed, 27 April 1994 ushered into a new chapter in our country where black, white, Indian, or colored got an equal right. And that right is protected in terms of the law. But if we reflect, how far have we gone from then to now? We are stuck in the harsh reality. Unemployment is too high, crime is devastating our society, load shedding destroyed our economy, corruption robbed us billions of dollars that should have made progress in the lives of people of South Africa. We can't afford this going forward. Just in one word, We need change. We can't allow the catastrophe we see to carry on as we go forward. The IFP believes we need to get into power an alternative government that is competent, that have a will to close the gap between the poor and the rich, a new government that will introduce accountability and consequence management. We need to remove the incompetent government that is failing us on a daily basis. We must get the government that will prioritize education and vocational skill, ensure that we provide quality education to our children. BEE should be reinforced and not benefit the connected politically, but benefit all people who were previously disadvantaged. The IFP believes that deal with the energy crisis once and for all. Do not go into load shedding because it doesn't help. Have a turnaround plan within a short space of time and load shedding completely. Cut down the bloated cabinet. Some deputy ministers are not needed in our country. Redirect billions of rands to create job opportunities. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Mr. Tlhabisa. Last but certainly not least, Mr. Tau.
Thank you very much to our moderator, fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, I think it's important that we acknowledge that part of what's happening in these elections is that the fundamental issue of economic transformation and black economic empowerment has been put on the agenda by those who object to black economic empowerment, who say that actually we must get rid of black economic empowerment. And I think it's an important issue to consider as we get into these elections and to listen to political parties carefully to the extent that they are committed to economic transformation, the emancipation of black people, and black economic empowerment. And the first statement that we make as the African National Congress is to reaffirm our commitment to fundamental socio-economic transformation, to the empowerment of black people, to the empowerment of women, and to the emancipation of those historically disadvantaged in this country. And we can talk about this because we come from a history over the past 30 years where we have had waves of black economic empowerment initiatives. These have included equity participation by entrepreneurs at different levels of ownership in various enterprises. And if we've had issues, we can discuss this later, but we've had a significant number of black people that have participated in different equity transactions and become part of established companies. Since 2017, we can count in excess of 500 such transactions that have taken place where black people are able to participate in environments in which historically they were excluded. But we're also in an environment where we've had to use regulatory instruments, in particular the Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment Act, as a means through which we enable and facilitate that the private sector invests in transformation and the economy. So 105 billion of enterprise and supplier development money has gone to enterprises through the private sector, where they, because they are regulated in terms of the Act, to ensure participation by black enterprises, enable that participation. So you don't even need to interface with government. All you need to interface with is an enterprise that is necessarily a measured entity to ensure that you're able to participate in different value chains of their enterprises so that you are able to grow your own enterprise. So we've used regulatory instruments to be able to do that. And we can continue to count the list of successes in relation to employment equity. We can talk about the number of black people that are in senior management positions, in executive positions, on board positions, because we've deliberately said employment equity should happen. So the question is, what do we need to do going forward? What we need to do going forward is to go into the next wave of economic transformation and empowerment. And we've firmly said as the ANC that the next period is about the next wave of economic empowerment, taking advantage of new opportunities that are created by the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, BRICS Plus, and other opportunities available. Thank you.
Thank you all for those opening statements. One of the biggest problems that South Africa faces is the question of inequality. And most of you have touched on the state of the economy. I think it's a fact that the structure of the economy has not changed. The transformation has not happened to the extent that it should have, nor has it impacted the millions of South Africans that need it. What we still have is an economy largely controlled, managed, and owned by white people. What is each of your party's plans to change that? And if we can please have specifics on what it is that you will do on the 5th of June, that you would do differently to change that. Let me begin with you, Mr. Tau.
The first is we're saying that having experienced the reality of the Black Industrialist Program, that we've committed in our manifesto to support an additional 2,000 Black industrialists as part of the industrialization program of the manifesto that we've indicated. So we are placing emphasis on industrialization, but in particular that we should have 2,000 Black industrialists that are part of the industrialization and reindustrialization initiatives. The second is about reform of the Black empowerment legislative framework, so that we're able to then learn from the past and say what should we do into the future so that we are able to accelerate Black economic empowerment. And the third is about increasing the fiscal and funding instruments available to Black entrepreneurs in particular, so that they are able to participate in different levels of opportunities, but also accessing different levels of capitalization of Black entrepreneurs. And without saying this is the last, but the last I'll make reference to is in relation to the Sovereign Wealth Fund. We're a country rich in minerals, but those minerals have not been able to create opportunities for all South Africans. And we're saying this is the collective wealth of the country. So when we're talking about the creation of a Sovereign Wealth Fund, we're saying let us leverage off the assets that we have as a country so that they are able to accrue to the millions of South Africans, and we're able to deploy these resources in the interest of the millions of South Africans.
Thank you for that, Mr. Tau.
Thank you very much, Kathy. The issue of inequality and the growing gap between the rich and poor needs a decisive government that will be able to come up with programs that will deal with this challenge, which has been seen growing over a period of 30 years. The first thing, education must take a top priority. If you provide quality education, that will equip every child, especially the previously disadvantaged, to be able to compete with every child from a previously advantaged community. You will set a stage for our Black young people to compete in every sector of our economy. And secondly, as I said, there is a need to cut down the bloated cabinet so that you redirect money to invest in creating opportunities for the previously disadvantaged to advance. Industrialization program should receive a top priority. I agree with my brother in that aspect. The Black economic empowerment, there should be no shy in dealing with it. The IFP is very clear. We believe in the BEE, but it needs to be monitored closely so that it doesn't benefit the politically connected. The local economic development should be a priority. Women, youth, and the physically challenged should receive top priority in our government.
Thank you. Mr. Zibi?
Kathy, thank you. So I think let's talk about why we've got so much inequality. It's because millions of South Africans earn zero income. Zero. It's not because they can't get into an equity ownership structure or get a promotion. They earn zero income. They're unemployed. Our unemployment is 44 to 45% in real terms. And so the first thing we've got to do is got to solve that problem so that people are in a position where they can earn an income. Between 88 and 92% of unemployed people either have matric or no matric at all. And until those millions of people are able to get into the real economy, working in a job that is more than a piece job, we will continue having this inequality problem, however much we do with the top 5%, which is probably what is in this room. And we've got to see our destiny as being tied inextricably to those people who earn nothing. We must do that as a moral imperative for all of us, firstly. The second thing is that we need to question whether we need to talk about black people earning 2, 3, 4, 5% of large white-owned businesses, and whether we do not now need to focus on 100% black and woman-owned businesses and focus our efforts there in growing new industries in this economy, or in the revival of the same anchor industries that we have. For instance, there is nothing stopping us from deciding that 50% of the renewable energy space is going to go to black enterprises, and will provide patient financing for that kind of work. And these are some of what we mean by saying we need new leaders who look at these problems differently. The one example I'm going to make about old thinking is that whole chicken fight that we had about chicken imports and that kind of thing. The government was protecting an oligopoly of 4 companies in South Africa. People in Mthatha have to get chicken from a truck which comes from the Midlands, hundreds of kilometers away. And this government is preoccupied not with developing small poultry farmers in that area, but with protecting large companies. That thinking doesn't work. And we are not going to reduce inequality if we continue to think in that way.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Zibi.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Kathy. Look, I think some of my colleagues have already touched on this. We won't be able to achieve our goal of transformation if the economy is not growing, and if that economy is not creating jobs, particularly for young people. But we must not also forget that the over 35-year-olds are also sitting at home as we speak, because factories have closed down, manufacturing industries have been taken over by other people who we don't know where they're coming from. So it's important that we must understand that for us to be able to transform this economy, we also need to ensure that we grow this economy by more than 5%. One of the fundamental things that we have to do for us to be able to grow that economy is to ensure that there's a rule of law in our country, in our province, that we bring back the rule of law and we arrest the lawlessness that is happening everywhere in our country, from your Home Affairs Department to the cities, inner cities of our municipalities. Everywhere, the lawlessness has just taken over. But also, as we are creating this transformation, we must be able to say, what do we do, as Songezo was saying, about people who are not employed at the moment, who are earning nothing, who are depending on 350 rand. Us as Action SA, we are saying one of the things that we must introduce is the universal basic income stimulus that will be able to be implemented for 3 years, where people who are unemployed will apply to government and be able to be included into the economy. So they will be able to assist us in stimulating the economy with the amount of money that will give them over and above the social grants that they are getting. But we are also saying we are going to create what we call an opportunity fund. This opportunity fund will be made up of, or at least will be funded by money that we'll be getting from big companies.
All right.
That will get into the opportunity fund, and this fund will be used for various measures, including funding tertiary education, including funding SMMEs.
Thank you, Mr.
And so forth.
Ngobeni.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Mdwaba.
Thank you very much. I think there's a lot we agree on. I just want to start with that. Cut down the bloated cabinet. Agreed. Manufacturing, we agree, but there must be an industrial policy. I don't see how we can work in the dark. We work in the dark right now. Same as the employment policy, we're working in the dark. We've never done audits. We don't know what skills we have. Some people say open the borders. Absolute rubbish. How do you open the borders? Because you want to bring in people when we've got people inside that are in trouble. BEE, absolutely. But BEE needs to be improved. Has to be improved. We have a lot of deals where people have been fronting, a lot of deals where our people have been kicked out when the white people think they've had enough of them. We've got a lot of deals in the financial sector where companies have been liquidated because they are black. They have been liquidated because they are black by the Prudential Authority because they may not compete with the white masters. That needs to change. Grow the economy, we agree. 5%, I don't know, my dear brother. Thabo Mbeki was doing 6 and it wasn't working. We need about 8, 9, 10% for it to do that. I was in Beltfontein in the Free State, 90% of the people there are on a grant. I don't hear anybody in our beautiful country talking about informality, and that shocks me. It's the second time I'm in a discussion and nobody talks about informality. And I want to talk about it later if you give us a permission, boss, because 65% of this economy has potential to grow there. 35% is the white monopoly we keep talking about. Nobody talks about productivity. That worries me. The IDC, NEFC does all of them. I like Songezo's idea, but I'd like to flip it. Because you can't say we want things to change but remain the same, just grow the money. IDC and all of them must be funders of first resort, not last resort. That's what a developmental state should be doing. People like Mariana Mazzucato will tell you that's what you do. When you work on SDG 8, economic activity and decent work, there's no silver bullet to changing our fortunes. But if you're going to fix SDG 1, no poverty, SDG 2, zero hunger, SDG 3 works on health, SDG 4 works on quality education, 7, 8, affordable energy, all of those to have peaceful institutions, you need to fix the situation of our unemployment. I've got more later.
All right. Thank you. Thank you all for those contributions. Today I have to be on my best behavior. So I'm leaving all the work to you because I have to be a neutral moderator. I must say that I'm quite interested in the responses from the various representatives of political parties. I thought they'd be picking holes in some of the responses that we've heard so far. But not my job for this morning. So I'm going to come over then to the floor and give you an opportunity to ask specific questions to our panelists. I see a hand has gone up right at the back, sir. I've noted you. So here's what I'll do. I'll begin with this end of the room. This is right down through the middle on my left to your right, and then we will move over to the other half of the room. We've got plenty of time. I am also going to ask you, please, you can introduce yourself, which organization you're representing, if you're representing an organization, but keep it as short as possible for me. I will be giving each of you a minute to make your questions, and perhaps if you have comments, you can save those for later. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Hello. Thank you, Kathy, and morning, everybody, and to the dignitaries at the stage. My name is Mike Ramajo. I come from the company called Ramajo Pros. Mine is just a confusion that is inside to hearing that we need to downsize on the cabinet. Yes, we need that. But then the pay slip or the still slip that we are having of a ballot paper that we are facing on the 29th, it is another challenge. To say, are we building or are we taking away from this country? It is to everybody on the stage. And to my deputy minister, just to ask you to say, we want to industrialize. If I want to maybe to say, are we building or are we taking away from this country? It is to everybody on the stage. And to my deputy minister, just to ask you to say, plastic being a next big economy where people are even pulling it on the streets. But we don't have the refineries that burns that into making models out of the plastic. How rapidly can we solve the challenge of unemployment? Well, we can give people 350s, but we cannot give industries to those who are participating. Thank you, my minister.
Thank you so much, sir. I'll take some more questions from this half of the room, please. If we can get a microphone to the front. Please raise your hand up high so they can see you.
Thank you very much. It's Buitumelo from Bright Star Foundation. It's a civil society organization. My question and plea is with regards to corruption. There's a lot of research going on and there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And investor confidence is really affected in South Africa. The question to the panel is, for things to work well, we know that corruption is the biggest problem. The country is crying out to know what is going to happen with people that are doing corruption. Currently, there's a lot of court processes, but they are not arrested. Their assets are not taken. They are still continuing. And once the leader does that, all of us in the room starts doing the same thing. What are we doing about corruption in order for us to do things that we are saying proper? Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll take one more question from this side of the room. Yes, sir. The mic is right behind you.
Ke a leboha mme. Mme o tlamehile ho botsa hore bomme ba kae ka pele ka kwa re ko boletse yona ba e arabe because ha utlwahale hore ba ya di-electioneng ba bua ka bomme bona ka bona ha ba transform potso ya ka ke SARS e collecta di trillion of rands every single year. A trillion goes out through this system that is called a procurement system. A trillion. And this is only for public sector. My question is a very simple one. What contribution have you made to change the trajectory of the procurement system in this country? In the procurement bill that is sitting in the NCOP, all the things that you are saying, what have you made in that bill that is going to change the trajectory of small business and in the main,
All right.
black business? Because if you haven't, then this is just a talk shop.
Thank you so much, sir. I'll come back to our panelists. The other half of the room, I will come back to you in the next round of questions. You would like to know who he is. All right. Sir, your name, please. All right. Kamogelo. Mr. Tau, I'll kick it off with you.
Thank you very much once again. I imagine, starting with the last question, the procurement bill is presented by us to Parliament. So that's our contribution. And it is in response to the reality of the challenges were identified in the Preferential Procurement Act, the challenges that were there in relation to court cases against the Preferential Procurement Act, and therefore the need to amend legislation so that we, one, entrench preferential procurement, strengthen the legislative framework, and ensure that it becomes more efficacious in terms of its output. So it was a very important legislative intervention in relation to preferential procurement. The second point relates to the issue of corruption. You know, there's a recent report released by Corruption Watch that indicated that huge reduction in corruption that has taken place more recently, and the efforts that have been made to address corruption in that regard. And there are several reports that indicate asset forfeiture, the resources that have been taken from people who are corrupt and have been reinvested. So the numbers are there to indicate the decisive action being taken, particularly by this administration, to ensure that we're able to deal with corruption and to ensure that people are held accountable. Of course, the government itself does not prosecute. It is the prosecuting authority that prosecutes. They have indicated and gave a recent report around the prosecution action, but one of the things we can't do as government is to sit and say, prosecute this one, because that would be interfering in a judicial process. And we're conscious about not doing that, but ensuring that we empower them through legislation and other instruments to enable them to be able to do their work. And the last point I thought I should refer to relates to the point that's raised by Mike. It is a commitment in the next administration to support 2,000 black industrialists, deliberately ensuring that we provide resources, equipment, and other mechanisms to support them in their endeavors. And this also includes, because our black industrialist programs has included circular economy participants in recycling and other circular economy opportunities. Thank you.
And the question of women?
The question of, well, firstly, let me say, of course, my convener, the convener of the Economic Transformation Committee of the ANC is a woman. And in fact, she designated me to attend on her behalf. Therefore, I can only say that She was initially designated, but because of other responsibilities, designated me.
Okay. Mr. Hlabisa?
Thank you very much, Kathy. Let me start with Michael. I heard him talking about the confusion on the issue of a long ballot paper. There shouldn't be a confusion. People must interrogate carefully the manifestos of various political parties. They must separate rhetorics from the reality, empty promises from what can happen, and make a choice. Whether it's 50 political parties in the ballot paper, it doesn't matter. Once you go to the polling station, having decided which party you think will bring change, you just go for that political party. I didn't get well on the issue of the bloated cabinet, but the point I was trying to drive home is our cabinet is too big. There are ministers we don't need. Some ministries do not need deputy ministers. Yes, some are too big to be manned by one person. We do need deputy ministers, but not in all of them. On Boitumelo, on the question of corruption, all you need a government that is bold enough to introduce consequence management. People who are implicated must be shown door. People who are implicated should not be brought back to the new government after May 29 as an indication that people implicated on serious corruption issues should take their time to clear their names. The people, there should be swift arrest, and the prosecution should not take too long on corruption cases. Have specialized courts to deal with corruption matters so that you send a message that corruption is something that you want to tackle head on. 2 minutes is gone.
You can answer on the issue of women?
Oh, well, the IFP do believe in the women empowerment. I got an invitation as the IFP president, and I honored it because I took it serious to come and engage with the audience.
The answers so far have been dismal on the issue of women. Absolutely dismal. Mr. Zibi?
Kathy, let me start with that question. I think we need to recognize where our country is. And usually, I mean, especially for an organization like ours as TU, the possibilities for a male to do what I do are much better than a woman at the onset, because we are a patriarchal society. We are a patriarchal society. There are many ways in which South African women remain vulnerable to be able to take the risks, that someone like myself can. We must be honest. We are a patriarchal society, and to ask a political organization, let's say like ours, why the leader is not a woman, you're asking a far deeper question. You really are asking a far deeper question. We are a patriarchal society that has very little opportunity for women. Women are more vulnerable than we are. Sure. They are. So let me deal with the issue of corruption. And we can have that conversation again, Kathy, but that's a fact of South African life. Whether you talk about being an entrepreneur or being in politics, women are in a more vulnerable position. But in our organization, we've got 3 premier candidates. 2 of them are women, both of them under 40. Our national chair is a woman, and the gender representation on our NLC is also strong. But the point of principle is important to make. I want to talk about a kind of corruption we don't talk about, and how politicians, my political party that is entrenched, have become gatekeepers, in particularly for black entrepreneurs and women. We have to pay kickbacks to certain politicians at local, provincial, and national level in order to get in. That's a form of gatekeeping. Secondly, which speaks to the vulnerability, if we are honest, it's much more difficult again for women because chances are somebody either wants money from you or they're going to try and sleep with you. If you do not agree, they don't let you in. Let us get into these spaces, I think, and let's confront the problems and call them by their real name.
Thank you, Mr. Zibi.
Thank you, Kathy. And I want to respond to Bitumelo's question, but I think it will also touch on Kamogelo's concern, because one of the things that we do as a society, as South Africa, is we tend to come up with very good policies on fighting corruption and ensuring that procurement is cleared of any influence and so forth. But we don't implement those policies, and we are not forceful in ensuring that we enforce them. As Action SA, when it comes to corruption, we declare it as enemy number one. And it's, we want to say it's crime against humanity. Because if you look at some of the examples of corruption, they are actually resulting in a lot of people, human rights being obviously taken granted for. So I mean, if you look at the Guyana water project, if you look at the corruption at the Lesotho Highlands, and the fact that people, as we speak here, do not have water, you can agree that it's actually a crime against humanity. But we also want to ensure that we recover all the proceeds of corruption. People that have stolen from us, they need to come back. We're still waiting for the Guptas to be brought back, but it's something that will definitely push once we're in government. We are also going to establish an anti-corruption Chapter 9 institution that will have the powers to investigate and also to ensure that they prosecute corruption. And we want to make sure that that institution is actually made up of people of integrity that will be chosen carefully by Parliament. We want to make sure that we protect whistleblowers. It's important because without them, we will not be able to know what is happening in various departments of government. So we must make sure that we get that right and we protect them at all costs. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Kathy. So I just want to say to Kamogelo, you should never judge a book by its cover. We are the cover sitting here. The brain's trust and content is plentiful where I come from in the UDM. You can check our lists, you'll see we have so many women. But more importantly, it's good to use a witness who's here. The lady who is the program director, Priscilla Sakani, can tell you to date in South Africa, I'm the only man who's ever served a woman leader in the Business Women Association. No other. And I must have done something very bad because there's been no men after me though. So, we then go into the issue of the procurement bill. I do agree with you. We have a lot of policies, but they fail because we're the worst implementers in the world. And personally, I wouldn't be so happy with anything that's rushed through during this time of the elections, even that bill. I would have had it wait so that we can look at it later when it's quieter, have a national convention in Ndaba that we call for in our manifesto, and see that we look at other ways, because there's many things I'd like us to look at in the UDM, like increased insourcing instead of outsourcing, for example, becomes something that we may want to think about. And I do have to say to you, Boitumelo, we have to strengthen the rule of law. We must name, we must shame, we must arrest, we must jail the criminals. As my president would say, ngamasela, kimashodu. So we must treat them as such. Think of Singapore as a model. We also talk about special anti-corruption courts, very, very important. Mike, and your confusion. Mike, don't be confused. We just want to make sure we have less oxygen thieves in ministers. There's a lot of oxygen thieves, very incompetent people that are there just by virtue of being in authority. We have no leaders. We've got people who don't know what they don't know. We need people who know, who are not theoreticians. And you'll see in our manifesto as well, we build, build, build. We want to talk as well about the reconfiguration of the Department of Employment and Labor, should there be time, and tell you how we would make it work. Thank you.
All right, thank you all for your contributions so far. I won't make any commentary on how the debate is going. I will, however, move to the left side of the room, your left, my right, more hands coming up this time. I'm going to ask that, so we've already, we're done with this session. We'll see if there's still more time to come back. I'm going to ask that we kick off. Who's got the microphone? I'm trying to spot the microphones. All right. Yes, ma'am. You may stand.
Good morning, everyone. How are you? I am Patriotic Alliance chairperson, Soweto Ward 16. I'm representing Patriotic Alliance. I think I should be there in front. First of all, Ons Baizani. Am I allowed, Chair?
Ma'am, you've got 40 seconds left.
Thank you. Okay, I'm saying that we women and South Africans men, we are gathering in Patriotic Alliance to fight corruption. Corruption, we have to start with illegal immigration. Already corruption is there. So let our government start closing our borders. Let our government start for the employment to be high in South Africa. If the government can take people back to their country that don't belong here because they're even doing crimes.
All right, ma'am, your time is up.
Thank you so much.
Please, if you can move the microphone behind you. There was another hand up. Yes, sir, you've got the microphone. You can go. I was just giving instruction for the microphone. Please, let's rather start right at the back and we'll work our way to the front.
Okay,
so
thank
can
you
the second, sorry, sir, can the second microphone please go right to the back? We'll come back to the front. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. My name is Ntata Makubo. I'm from the National Empowerment Fund. Now, my question to the panelists is this. You've got an institution that has already shown its capabilities. The National Empowerment Fund it's celebrating its 20 years this year. In that 20 years, 10 years ago, it had made sure that it transforms its funding capabilities of making sure that there's women empowerment instilled into it. So it answers the question of transforming women. It also talks to the question of funding black industrialists. And when you're talking about black industrialists, in the 2,000 that you want to actually add on, 510 of the black industrialists that have been funded already were done by the National Empowerment Fund. Why don't you recapitalize such a vehicle that has shown that it can be able to actually perform?
All right. Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Hi. Good afternoon. Good morning. My name is Kagiso Lekgotlo. I am from a company called Lefika Hive Energies here in Ekurhuleni. One of my questions that, as we address corruption, I would like to say we as a country are not addressing the corruption that is done by politicians, professional politicians, who are moving from party to party, but have never exposed themselves as good leaders. Every time a person gets deployed, if he gets redeployed by another party, he moves to a new family party and claims to be a leader. How are we going to deal with that corruption? Because we keep on sending people to parliament in different parties, but they don't deliver and they're not attending committee meetings. How are these gentlemen and ladies going to solve it?
All right. Thank you, sir. We're going to pause it there. I'm going to give our panelists an opportunity to respond to the questions. Mr. Mdwaba, I'll begin on your end this time round.
Thank you. So firstly, Kagiso, I agree fully with you, especially when you say people who claim to be leaders. You heard me talk about people in authority. We don't have leaders, we have people in authority who use their authority to bully us and manipulate us. So for us, we would have a meritocracy. We're going to have people who can deliver, who have proved to be able to deliver. That's why we have people who are extremely, extremely capable. And from a corruption point of view and an ethical governance point of view, once you've been found wanting, once you have been arrested and jailed, have been found guilty, you're not making your way into the UDM, that's for sure. When you talk to Ntato, I thought my colleague here, Song, has already said that, he's going to thinking of giving more money. I think all of us would want to keep what works. I don't think we want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. That's why South Africa is in such trouble. There's a lot in the past where we threw out the baby with the bathwater. That which works, we keep. But the only thing I'm saying to you, I think you shouldn't worry in my government. Oh, by the way, I'm also the Gauteng premier candidate like him. Yes, I forgot to tell you that. Maybe it's important. This is the right time. My last 10 seconds. So as Gauteng premier candidate, when I become the premier, the NEF is safe in terms of my vote. But there must be a funder of first resort. I know a lot of people, SMMEs particularly, who don't get funded because you are waiting for Jesus to fund them first. This is nonsense. So we need to change that. In terms of the lady from the PA, I agree you should have been here, but I think the PA is sleeping. Why are you not here? Your colleagues are not doing you justice because you should have been here. We needed you. You heard the president complaining from the IFP that we need more ladies. But illegal immigration, you heard me say, close the bloody borders. Close them. There's no way we're opening those borders. Yes, migration is good. We must have migration. All the big cities of the world, all the big countries that are globally competitive have got people, unlike Trump, we want them here. But they must be legally here, not illegal. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And I agree that there is a lot of corruption happening in the immigration system that we have. And I mentioned it at the beginning of my remarks. We need to reform that Home Affairs Department. And we need to arrest those who are giving foreigners illegal papers and allowing them to do what they are doing in our country. In some instances, turning our young girls into prostitutes, giving our kids drugs and, rendering them to be zombies. I think that needs to be tackled and we must be unapologetic about that. In regards to, politicians moving from party to another, I think one of the things that we need to do, dealing with corruption, is to work on the culture. Not only on politicians, but also work into the establishment itself, officials who are working with us in government. I think we need to get officials to understand that they are professionals, number one. They don't serve any political party. They serve the residents of Johannesburg. Yes, there will be political parties coming with manifestos and they need to be implemented. But you don't have to choose whether you're going to implement Action SA manifesto or Rise Mzansi or ANC. You must implement it as because these are the results of elections. But you must stay away from politics and do your work as a professional. So our view is that we need to professionalize that sector and we need to ensure that we remove corruption, that we arrest those that are found corrupt, whether it's politicians and whether our officials, and we must throw away the keys once they are arrested so that we can be able to set an example and start building a new culture in the public sector department. Thank you very much, Kathy.
All right, thank you. Mr. Zibi?
Thanks, Kathy. So on immigration, I think it's really simple. The immigration system is broken. The South African laws are not being applied as they should. We've lost the capacity at Home Affairs, and there is also corruption at points of entry where people get married to people they've never met and that sort of thing. And in terms of employment, just apply South African law as it should be. And I think we will be in a much better space. I want to spend a lot more time on the funding of development finance institutions because I haven't moved from another political party, so I can't answer the question, except to say even the politicians that have not left their parties are still a problem. It's not just those who move. The rest of them are. That's why we talk about the establishment. But we believe that it is possible actually to provide 100 billion rand annually in funding to black-owned businesses and industrialists. Where does that money come from? There are several sources. One, you can consider wealth taxation as one source. Secondly, you redirect some of the funds in our fiscus because the budget is made up of political choices about what's important and what's not. And there is money to be found there. The third is that we can actually advocate for the release of some of the liquidity reserves that are with the South African Reserve Bank in the same way that we did with COVID. When people talk about that 500 billion, a substantial amount of it constituted a release of the funds from the Reserve Bank back into the banking sector so that they could assist with more favorable terms in terms of when you pay back that money and that sort of thing. You can use the same instrument to facilitate commercial bank lending on patient financing terms with payment holidays and so on, so that people don't have the pressure of having to repay the loan immediately after they start. There are many innovations that we can do, but that, again, that's why we need new leaders. You can't have a sovereign wealth fund in a mining sector that's not making enough money.
All right. Mr. Hlabisa?
Kathy, I think the question on women representation, one can say a final word on it. We must admit it doesn't reflect well as we sit in front here. I think it's one assignment, because if you are particularly invited, you tend to honor the invitation. But I think it's a matter that we should consider, despite you are personally invited, to demonstrate that we give opportunity to our women in platform like this one. My sister from the Patriotic Alliance, I agree with you. Our immigration control systems are in tatters. We need a government that will be firm in controlling the porous borders to ensure that people who are buying and selling the documentation of being a South Africans are arrested in order to bring this to an end. The IFP believes people who are not specialized skills in South Africa from foreign countries who are our neighbors should be assisted to go back to their respective countries, only keep specialized people and have a contract of transferring those skills as it is in an international practice. On the question of corruption, name and shame, arrest them, prosecute. Once a person is found guilty, keep a person in jail. The assets forfeiture unit must collect what was not acquired accordingly, so that you set a tone as that, and when we go forward, we would not want to experience another state capture.
Thank you, Mr. Hlabisa.
Thank you very much. Just to indicate that we have recently published a white paper on immigration. And part of the decision to publish the white paper, because it is a revised policy document on immigration, is because we have identified gaps in current immigration legislation and policies, including international conventions that we have signed, and in certain instances the need to apply for exemptions in certain international conventions that we have signed, so that we're able to deal more decisively with immigration and the administration of immigration. And I think, without getting into the detail of the policy, the white paper gives us greater strength to deal with what we have experienced as the gaps in immigration policy. The point around the National Empowerment Fund, firstly, I think it is a reaffirmation of the fact that through instruments that we have created, such as the National Empowerment Fund, we've been able to invest decisively in black business to be able to participate actively in the economy and be able to grow. The question being asked is, should we recapitalize the National Empowerment Fund? And I should say, it's a discussion we're having in the National Executive Committee of the ANC around the need to recapitalize the National Empowerment Fund, but also the need to diversify funding instruments for black entrepreneurs. Do we have tax incentives, a la the 12J tax incentive, to directly into black enterprises, so that you're able to get funders that direct their resources to black enterprises? And we think that that's important. When we're talking about a sovereign wealth fund, we're talking about the reality that the commodity cycle goes in different cycles. When there's a commodity boom, should those resources not be invested in empowering the rest of the country as opposed to empowering the few? And that's the point that we're making about the Sovereign Wealth Fund and how it should be funded.
All right. Thank you to our panelists for that round. I'm going to ask that, I just need to see where the microphones are. All right. Yes, ma'am, at the back, you've got the microphone in your hand.
Absheni. My name is Butomi from Butomi Social Workers and Consulting. Actually, what I want to ask, I'm going to direct the question to the individuals which I need to ask the questions. Firstly, I want to ask Mr. Hlabisa, you indicated that you're actually working on skills development with regards to education. My question to you is that, are you aware of the many graduates that already graduated from 2014 until currently who are actually unemployed? If you are aware, as a party, what is it that you are willing to do to change their circumstances? And to Mr. Zibi, I just want to say I agree with a lot of things that you were saying, except one. We do have the potential as a woman, and I have a challenge for you. Take me on, I will show you that I do have a potential. My question to all of you, the 5 of you, is with regards to the 2020 NDP. What I understand with regards to South Africa is that we have got a coalition government on 3 spheres.
All right.
And I believe that all of you are part of the spheres. So that NDP was actually aimed to eradicate poverty
All
as
right,
well.
ma'am, your time is up.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Tsepo Marumula. I just want to ask a question to all the panelists. I'm intrigued by the conversation on industrialization and enabling local manufacturing. I'm surprised that we are not linking this conversation to what is happening in the digitization and digitalization landscape. I think we all are familiar with what is happening with Shein and Temu and the entrance of highly low-cost products into the South African economy. So if we are going to fund black industrialists to manufacture, who are they competing with? They're competing with products that are entering South Africa, and there seems to be a lax in terms of the control environment to facilitate the reduction in the illicit entry of these products into South Africa. And I'd like to understand what the policy positions would be or what the response would be, because we're no longer competing with brick and mortar, but we're competing with AI tools that are in jurisdictions beyond South Africa that are facilitating the entry of products that will outcompete with South Africans. That's one. But 2 is that if you look at what Temu has done, is that currently Temu spends $10 million a day in advertising. If you've got black industrialists that must advertise their products on digital platforms, they have to bid for the keywords.
All
the
right.
cost of keywords is multiplied by 6 times. So in other words, we're going to be funding these businesses, but it will be going into a black hole unless something is done around the digital environment.
Thank you. I can't locate the microphones. All right.
Here's the mic, here's the mic, here's the mic.
Okay, sir.
Yes. My name is Lubani Mukiti. It's so said that SMMEs in South Africa, there's no well-defined SMME architecture that says that from the point where particular players register themselves to a point where immediately they compete with huge interest, as my colleague was saying here, how do you protect that? And I would want to get a sense from all the political parties that are in front of us. The second one is the laxity that we see within our competition laws, particularly from a regulatory perspective, because all of us, when we have products, whether in the FMCG area, we are competing with the tiger brands that are strong and have shelf space. And our competition regulations have not protected that space for black SMMEs to compete at the same level or to create a dispensation that will favor the mushrooming of SMMEs and participate in those sectors. For now, I think I'm fine.
All right. Thank you, sir. So we'll pause it at those 3 questions. Can the microphones please move to the far end of the room? That's where we'll take the final round of questions. Mr. Mdwaba, it looks like you want to go first.
I'm looking for a mic. Oh, you said the far end of the room. Is that not me?
No, it's fine. You can go
Okay.
for it.
Okay, you see, I want to know my place, always. So, colleagues, I want to start with Tsepo. I don't know where Tsepo is. I'm so happy you raised this issue of digitization because you see, the boss was rushing us. You remember I talked about the future of work, artificial intelligence, and 4th industrial revolution policy. We don't have one, right? So for us, it's an opportunity as a country to quantum leap. When we talk about the national employment law policy and we talk about industrial policy, that's what I said when we started. You got to link it into the future of work. Now, some of us have led the world. I mean, in 2019, when we had the ILO centenary celebration, 187 countries, I led all the teams in the world in coming up with an ILO declaration. So some people in this country, because we disrespect each other, don't think that matters, but I think it does matter, because then you know what to do, right? So for me, agree with you, we are a logarithm-driven world now, and South Africa needs to lead in this, and we can, because we've got the people to do that. When we talk about SMMEs not being well defined, Luan, absolutely agree. That's why as well I was talking about the informal sector, and I say it's a pity we don't talk about the informal sector, because there's different kinds of SMMEs. There's SMMEs in the 35% white monopoly capital driven economy. The economy that makes sure that we maintain and keep the people in charge. Colonialist, Eurocentric, you call it whatever you like, right? And then as black business, you hope that that is going to help you. It's not going to help you. All you do is make sure that the usual people continue to do the usual stuff, right? To what Songeza was saying, you can't work with the same stuff. That's Einstein actually who said, it's a test for insanity if you keep doing the same things and you hope for a different outcome, but you keep doing the things that are wrong. So you've got to then cater for the SMMEs in the informal sector. You've got to look at differently. There is a company, you can look it up, called Kasi Connect. I'm the chairman of this advisory board. Check what Kasi Connect does, for example. It works with Kasi Township companies and looks at how to create a platform that is AI, artificial intelligence generated. Okay, no, but I have to answer everything, boss. Now I've lost it.
Please be mindful of the time.
I am trying, okay. So, the last one is Butoni. Butoni graduates who are unemployed, the less about that said, the better. We need to start working on ecosystems. We mustn't come up with these stupid programs where people say, we are creating training opportunities and employment opportunities, the ones that are being launched now at the election, right? Because those are 6 months, 3 months jobbies. You end up queuing for the UIF, absolute rubbish. And it's a bad case for mental illness. And in terms of the 2030 NDP, the NDP does not even have a single word of productivity in it. That's a mess, in my view. That needs to be reviewed as well. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mdwaba.
Yeah, Kathy, I think on the question of global competitiveness, I think it's a no-brainer that we have to compete with the international world, and for us to be able to do so, we need to make sure that from the level of our education, whether you can look at from primary to secondary, we need to make sure that digitization and it's there, that young people are able to learn about these things from a young age, and they can be able to be imparted with the skills so that we can be able to compete at an international level. So it's, unfortunately, we can't run away from it. We have to compete at that level, and for us to be able to do so, we need government that can be able to invest in skills, improvement, and ensuring that the young people are well skilled. A lot of graduates are unemployed, indeed, it is true, and that is actually something that we need to deal with as well. One of the things that we want to introduce as Action SA is the National Voluntary Service. For those that are unable to get jobs immediately after they've graduated, while we are building this economy to create jobs, we need to make sure that they are accommodated into the economy, and we think that one of the things that we can do is to invite them into the National Voluntary Service. Obviously, as we said earlier on, the 350 will not be enough to sustain anyone, whether you are a graduate or you are a dropped out at the high school. That is why we need to look after those as well, to ensure that they are able to stimulate the economy by giving them something in the pocket that will allow them from time to time to travel to town or go to the internet cafe and still be on the job market and looking for opportunities. So those are things that we can still do, are practical, and we need to make sure that as we are doing those things, we are growing the economy.
Thank you,
very much.
Mr. Ngobeni.
Thank you, Chair. So they say if you're explaining, you're losing. But I want to talk to this, to my earlier answer about the higher risk that women have in starting something. And let me, first of all, the capabilities of South African women are the same or better than men. That's a fact. What I was speaking to is if I understood the question to say, why isn't your national leader a woman? And all I was saying is, it is less risky in a society that we have for a man to leave a job like I did to go and start something new. It's riskier for women. That's all I was saying. Some of your colleagues in the BBC said to me, I'll help you find woman leaders. We spoke to a lot of people. People want to, but they worry about the risks that attend to taking that level of risk. That's all I was saying. I wasn't saying women are not capable. Please don't get me wrong. And I think it's true in the case of, various other sectors. People can't just leave their jobs. I'm just going to make an example about, you talk about digitalization, we talk about network infrastructure in general at RISE. And I'm going to make an example about some decisions that we could take, that the Wild Coast area and the Drakensberg area are going to be prime tourism assets that we're going to develop with the expansion going mostly to small enterprises and black and woman-owned businesses. That means you must fix the roads, you must put a telephony connectivity there, 5G, so that you've got Wi-Fi, you must put water, and that sort of thing. In the process of installing that infrastructure, it's got a stimulatory impact on the economic activity in the area. The enterprises that get involved in doing that work can be on a transformative basis, and afterwards the prime tourism commercial activities can also have a transformative effect. We need to begin to think about these things in an integrated way, I think, because we tend to think in silos and speak in silos about what can be done. And I think we miss a lot of opportunity to have a better quality discussion in that way. Thanks for the grace, Chair. I know you gave me an extra 15 seconds.
All right, no problem. Mr. Tlhabisa.
Thank you very much, Kathy. On a direct question around, do we know the status of the unemployed graduates? The answer is yes. At a local government level, where we are governing in 29 municipalities, we charged our municipalities to collect the data of all unemployed graduates at a local level where we govern, that where opportunities occur, they must receive a first priority. But we have gone further than that. We have undertaken the collection of data nationwide of all graduates of different categories. In our manifesto, we say there should be a grant, the IFP, that will introduce immediately after the elections of 3,000 rand per unemployed graduate for a period of 12 months. Why? You need to enable a graduate to be able to go to interviews, to be able to go online, make application, look for jobs. In a period of 12 months, there must be a move in an unemployed graduate. And the IFP says all three spheres of government, the unemployed graduates must be deployed under the internship while they are looking for relevant, qualified positions which they studied for. We also say at a university level, you must close the departments that are redundant. Why should you keep on funding people to do qualifications which are not needed in the country, or there are many people whom you can't provide job opportunities? Universities especially, and not technical, but universities, those departments must close until you consume the manpower, and then you can start thereafter in order to deal with the unemployed graduates. Thank you, Kate.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thanks once again. So there's a study that was published by Miriam Altman a few years ago that indicated that, in fact, part of the problem in the economy of the country is that the vast majority of jobs are accessed through networks, particularly in the private sector. So it is somebody that somebody knows that gets that person into a job. And that's where the vast majority of people gain access to job opportunities. So many graduates, particularly in the township, in our rural areas, are literally networked out of the system because they do not know the person that would be able to recruit them into the job. So what do we have to do? We have to break down the barriers to entry into the job market, particularly for our young people and our graduates. And how do you do that? Amongst others, through national government policy that says we're going to scrap requirements for experience in particular categories of employment in the public sector, so that young people can be able to apply, gain access to a job, and not be asked for their experience because they've just graduated. Through youth employment scheme and other packages around, and we've heard that in Gauteng and other provinces, around ensuring that we break down barriers to entry, young people are able to register and linked to job opportunities so that they are able to, in partnership with the private sector, access those job opportunities. And this thing of breaking down barriers to entry remains the most critical intervention with regards to addressing the plight of unemployed youth. With regards to AI and industrialization, I think that we have to accept that technology is evolving and we're going to have to adapt to some of this technology evolution and introduce and entrench artificial intelligence and other AI technologies into our industrialization plan, and that constitutes part of how we see industrialization going forward in the South African economy. And lastly, with regards to the SME architecture, the point I want to make is that we need to aggregate efforts of both public and private sector to ensure access for SMEs into entrepreneurship opportunities, whether this is through enterprise and supplier development, but also access to market. And if I had the time, I would share an experience in Gauteng on the work that we're doing in relation to access to the shop floor for retailers and producers in that regard.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Dao. I'm going to come to this part of the room for our final round. Yes, sir, I see you. If you can please stand.
Thank you very much.
Oh, apologies, sir. There's somebody else behind you who's already on his feet. I'll come. You'll be after him.
Good day. I'm Kutleko Maseko from Action SA. My question goes particularly to Parks Dao. You know, I'm listening to Parks Dao creating a utopia of solutions about what ANC could have done over 30 years. But I would actually like to know, how do we know that when ANC has, let's say, premier candidates, especially female premier candidates, they are not being used as faces? Because we've seen, to a large extent, men coming in as de facto leaders in your conferences. We can take Siboniso Duma as an example with Nomusa Dube. We know what's happening there. We can look at Mpumalanga with Mandla Msibi and the premier. There are so many examples. So I would like to know that, aren't you just buying face? Because actually, I would say you guys have got de facto leaders, which is also spilling into MK, as we can see. And I would like to get an answer if women leaders are not just being used as faces. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that question. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. My name is Itumeleng Buiganyo, and I'm from the organization called ITU Solutions. Look, I'm very worried as a citizen, particularly to, you know, the negative narrative that is pushed by opposition political parties, just so that people can gain relevance. I'm worried, particularly, I mean, we have seen, and most of us have seen, in our coalition, what's so-called coalition by government in Gauteng, which is very disappointing as an economic hub to society, which in my opinion, it needs to be a blueprint to other provinces and give direction. Now, I just want to give a small little advice to political opposition political parties. We understand what you're trying to do, and you all want to, you know, assist the country and grow the country.
All
Please
right, sir.
not oppose for the sake of opposing, just forget relevance. And my bigger concern, really, it's about coalition government, which clearly is very creating, in my opinion, instability,
Sir,
especially
your
in the
minute
city.
is up.
How
Thank
do
you.
we, as leaders,
Sir, your
going to
minute
resolve
is
that?
up.
Thank you very
you.
much. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Siyabonga Mshibe. I'm from the South African Youth in Property Association. Before I go into the question, I think we're still failing on what we're speaking about in terms of transformation. The lady over there from PA, we spoke about not having ladies in the panel discussions. Instead of walking the talk and accommodating her to the seats that are available, we are saying, no, she's not part of the panels. And it's the same thing that is happening also with our government, whereby when resources are available, they say, well, you're not part of the list. There are seats that are available. I think let's start with walking the talk and accommodating the lady from PA to the seat, then we'll proceed. I think, Katie, they're waiting for...
So I think that obviously how the debate has been structured is in the hands of the organizers. So you have about 20 seconds of your minute left.
Okay, no, it's fine. And the same comments we're getting, these are the stumbling blocks we get in why we don't transform South Africa. Let me proceed. Our political sphere is not transforming also because of the trend we are seeing. Politicians make corruption firstly look fashionable. When politicians are arrested, they go on a convoy. When it's just a civil servant, they're to be fetched by a van. The second issue is...
All right, your time is up, sir. Apologies. We'll have to leave it there. Can we please move the mic?
Good morning, everyone. I am Kathy Mbenga. I am a pastor, I am a lawyer, and a human rights defender. And I would like to start by congratulating our panelists from different political parties. In my country where I'm coming from, when they are the representative of different countries together discussing about something, obviously they will fight. But I see our panelists with a lot of maturity. In my country, we see the face like, you are lying, you know? But that's very good. And my question is, I will address my question to Mr. Tabisa and Mr. Parks. Mr. Tabisa, you say the black economic empowerment must be done without any shy. I don't want you to talk like Jesus Christ with parable. I want you to open it more, because even the Black Business Summit that we are here, hearing about black business is like, this is not xenophobic. Or we need to do more on the ground to impose our presence as black than, you know, renaming our, you know, I don't know.
All right.
Yes, is what I wanted to say. So Mr. Tabisa and Mr. Parks, because you are from the INC, the party in power, please, if you can open it. I am also the founder of Do You Know Foundation. Thank you.
All right.
Good morning. My name is Leletu from Rainwater, but the views today are of my own. They're not of of the institution. The direct question will be on the African National Congress. One, do you think you have failed South Africans? And if you think you have failed South Africans, what do you know of that failure and what are you doing to fix it? On the UDM side, I see you talk a lot of progress and you are quoting where you have done great jobs or you have implemented. And with that progress, you then reflected on the ANC by saying that they've got fossils. Now my question is, when are you thinking of changing your leaderships in that your current incumbent and your leader has been there since inception, 1997? Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir, in the front. If we can please get the microphone to the gentleman right in the front seat, he'll be the last question from this side.
Can I speak?
Yes, sir, you can go ahead.
Morning, Kathy. Good morning, our panelists. First, I want to say my name is Fred Arvins. I am the founding president of the Junior Mining Council and represent the mining cluster within the Black Business Council. My question, and I don't want to criticize our government, we all know, and I also don't want to criticize our politicians. But my question to them is, and it's the same question that we've asked our president in December last year when we attended the delegation, the BBC delegation with him. We've all heard about the unemployment in our country. Now my question is, I'm in the mining sector. What is the current or the new government going to do to change the current junior mining sector by bringing a lot of mines that's in business rescue and in care and maintenance? We all know that mining can create enormous amount of employment. And my question to the president then was, what are you going to do? He says to me or to the delegation that we will form a task team in March 2024. Now my question to you as a businessman, will you also be a new government of task teams and commissions and investigation?
All right.
Or will you be a government of action? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Last question.
Good morning. Thank you, Kathy. My name is Dumisani Mpafa. I'm the head of policy at BBC. I really shouldn't be asking questions as the host, but I thought we'll be less wiser if I don't put this question or probe it further. Songezo talks about the structure of the economy. We know the Competition Commission published a market concentration report in 2021. It confirmed what we already know, that our economy is highly concentrated. Now the question is to all the panelists, do we believe or do we see this high concentration as an albatross in the neck of our economic growth and to an extent to transformation and empowerment? If we do, what are we proposing as deconcentration policies or measures to mitigate that? Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that question. So because we've taken a longer round of questions, I'll give our panelists 3 minutes each to respond. This is the last round of questions, so we're getting ready to also wrap up this conversation. You can take the liberties in terms of who wants to go first. Mr. Zibi, you look like you're on the edge of your seat, so we'll start with you.
I was looking at Parks, by the way, because we've had a certain order here of things. Thank you very much. So let me just talk about the narrative. You know, there is no negative narrative, actually. South Africans live really terrible lives, really. Human beings live in the now, not in the past. What you did for me last year at a very basic level might be useful now, but if I'm hungry today, I really am. And I really want to share with the room why addressing hunger is our #1 priority, because we don't think about it. Many South Africans, if not most, don't have more than 2 meals a day. Millions have 1. An uncomfortably high number don't have daily meals at all. We hear stories of people who would rather sleep and people think they're sleeping, but actually they can't get up because they're hungry. We are in that space where people are also searching for alternatives to this pain. And to say these are narratives is not right. And I think we really need to also think outside of our own bubbles in which we live and think about how the other side lives. And where we start in terms of policy, that makes sure people have the basics and they are able to get into the economy and participate meaningfully, because you can't do so when you are hungry. So that's the first thing. I'll deal with the market concentration. And I'll just use the remaining time to talk about that chicken issue, because it's an obsession of mine, right? How do you deconcentrate the economy? The government has choices. The poultry companies chose to use the major retail organizations as their distribution points during the time the South African economy was growing quite fast, pulled by China between 2001 and 2008. And the demand for protein spiked higher than what they could produce, which opened up the space for imports to come in. So at the time our government was intervening, they chose to intervene on behalf of the poultry farmers and not on behalf of the smallholder farmers in key regions of our economy, because there is economic opportunity that you can leverage. So regulation is important, but understanding the real economy and the market forces that drive both demand and supply is equally important. And I feel that if the correct resources had been directed towards meeting that demand at a local and regional level, would have by now started helping us to deconcentrate at a micro level.
All right.
But we don't, because fighting with the US, whatever, is more important than serving the person who's struggling to buy chicken in the Eastern Cape. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Zivi. Mr. Ngobeni?
Yeah, thank you, Kathy. I wanted to deal with the issue of coalition, but also touching on the negative narrative that Itumeleng is worried about. And although I think that Songes also covered it, South Africans are really hurtful, to use that word, and they have been quite patient for the last 30 years. And in many cases, they've lost patience not only on the ANC, but they've lost patience on political parties. So it's important that we do not view that as a negative narrative, but view that as a mirror that we need to look at and ask ourselves, what can we do to actually give them hope that things will be better tomorrow? So it's not really about us wanting to always attack the ANC, and even when things are good. But what do you say if a government wait for 30 years, at least maybe 29 years, 7 months, or 29 years, 4 months, to start talking about very progressive interventions and implementing them ahead of elections? When young people have been complaining throughout to say, can we have opportunities? What is it for us that we can be able to do? And then only close to elections, you use the state resources to then try and give them hope. So we must keep quiet and not say anything and say, we will be then labeled as people who do not appreciate. No, let's be quite frank about it. So the issue of coalition is quite important. There's no other way that we can look at it. There is a possibility of a coalition at the national level. There's a possibility of a coalition at provincial level here in Gauteng. And we must be able to face these coalitions so that we can be able to deliver. Because what we must do as political parties, we must go into those negotiations with one thing in mind, that is to serve the interest of our constituents. We must not go into those coalitions to advance our positions and our interest and so forth, but to serve the interest of our residents. And of course, the issues of values and whether the principles are aligned with other parties are also there, but they are secondary to an agreement on what is it that South Africans want. And once we agree on that as political parties, then let's go there and demonstrate maturity. Because we cannot legislate maturity. Political parties, political leaders must go into those negotiations and demonstrate maturity so that they can be able to resolve the issues of our communities, because it's getting too late. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Mdwaba?
Is this the last time we speak, Boss Lady?
Yes.
Okay. So I want to start by saying I can be found at T01 on X. I'm on TikTok, I'm on YouTube. You can find me there, then you can be able, for all the things I couldn't say today, there's videos there. Now, let's get back to, I'm also on IG, but it's my kids who want me on IG. So my daughter doesn't like me quoting this person, so I'm not going to mention the person by name because I'm scared of my daughter. But she says, some people only know God when they see a slice of bread. Never forget that. So I'm agreeing with Songes. That's why I said the closest thing to a silver bullet for me is SDG 1, no poverty. SDG 2, zero hunger. SDG 8, economic activity and decent work. It's closest thing to a silver bullet. And then we have opportunities, head of policy. There's nothing called an albatross in my world. That it doesn't exist. Nothing is impossible, nothing is a problem. That's why in our manifesto we talk about a convention and Indaba to talk about some of these serious things. Like, there's some fundamental things. Why do we always chase the Americans with AGOA, for example? Well, what's the issue here? We got so many options, the BRICS and other things, and I don't want to go into it because there's no time, but there's no such a thing as an albatross. We can find a solution to everything. I want to talk about the issue of Fred. Fred, I know what you're talking about. When I was chairman of Productivity SA before I was rudely removed by Nxesi, I can tell you that every time we try to say, listen, you changed the name from the Department of Labor to Employment and Labor, because Cyril wanted to see in his administration that we could have employment policy and employment creation and sustainable enterprise creation. But unless he didn't know how to, and nobody was there to tell him how to. So we tried to tell him how to. We had task teams and meetings and committees for 5 years, meetings and committees. So that, if things don't happen, we're going to move you to the side. I never talked about fossils, Leletu, but I think you were looking for an excuse to attack me or the UDM. Fossils never came out of the mouth, but be that as it may, I want to remind you that the deputy president of the UDM is Nkwankwa Ngabayomzi, who, now that my president is the Eastern Cape Premier-elect, is going to be the next president, okay? And there's a lot of ladies, they're here, sitting with me. I also want to mention that my colleagues, the ladies, are telling me that you think I'm on my phone. It's just that I'm very digital that way. I'm writing notes, I'm here. I'm not on the outside world, I'm with you. I just use this note paper. Stumbling blocks, transformation, very worried about the narrative. I think when you belong to a party that's worried, because you're talking about old things. I don't know why you are so worried. We are into content politics
Mr.
now,
Mdwaba.
not sloganeering. Content politics. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hlabisa?
Thank you very much, Kathy. Because this is the last opportunity to speak, let me firstly thank the audience. You were quite enlightening, the questions you raised and the comments you made. Let me start with my brother, Tumeleng. There is no negative narrative, my brother, from the opposition. The IFP is on record at every level of government. We believe in constructive opposition. We don't oppose for the sake of opposing. The truth is, in South Africa, over 30 years, we have been failed as a country. If you want to deny it, you can live in denialism. Unemployment, crime, load shedding is killing our community. Yes, a claim can be made that in 1994, it was only 8 million people employed, and now it's 16.7 million. But the hard truth, the rate of unemployment was 13% in 1994, but now it's 32%. So you can strike the balance. A claim can be made that we have provided electricity to many people, but it doesn't make sense to provide all and then put them in the dark thereafter. So there is no negative narrative. It's the reality. People of South Africa should wake up, because some might be asleep. On the 29th of May, we need a change. We should not vote by heart, but we should apply meaning to what we see. What we see as a failure in the coalition government, in COJ in particular, is a result of haphazard decisions to form a coalition government. The truth, you have only 14 days in South Africa, once results are out, to form a new government. If you did not prepare on hand Because no one amongst the political parties will get more than 50%, just no one. That is a given fact. People should start now preparing for a stable government. We shouldn't take what we see in COJ or Eguruleni as what is going to happen. No, no, no. We are matured now. My learned sister, on the question of BEE, what I was saying, some political parties are ambiguous. The IFP is clear. Black people should come top as a priority to address the previous disadvantages.
All right.
Thank you.
So Mr. Hlabisa says a claim could be made. No, it's not a claim, it's a fact. From 8 million people in jobs in 1994 to 16.7 million today. You know what the problem was when you're talking percentages? It is the reality that the vast majority of black people were not counted. They were living in rural areas, in homelands, and so on, and they were not counted. So it's not a claim, it's a fact. It is a fact that the economy of this country has grown threefold since 1994. It is not a claim, it is a fact. It is a fact that, in fact, black people did not have access to entrepreneurship opportunities, and through broad-based black empowerment legislation and other instruments they have access. It is not a claim, it is a fact. And it is a fact that we have to deal with. So to suggest that it is a claim, I think, is very disingenuous. It's very disingenuous because it's not acknowledging the reality of what people experience. When we talk about employment equity and black people holding senior management positions, board positions, and so on, it is not a claim, it is a fact. It is something that has been realized. Do we still need to do more? Yes, we need to do more. But can we count progress on the basis of what we have done? Certainly we can count progress. And this is also on the socio-economic side, on the social side of our development. The reality is that we talk about the reality of inequality in our country. But part of that discussion excludes the reality that this is a government that ensures that people gain access, poor people gain access to free housing, that poor people are subsidized to access water. You know, when they calculate Gini coefficient, they don't include free basic access to water, free basic access to electricity, free basic access to healthcare, free basic access to education for poor young black children that would not otherwise have had access to education. They do not include that. They do not include that these children get a meal at school, breakfast and lunch, and that is from the fiscus. It is doing something about poverty in the country. So if you are to aggregate that and say, all the resources directed at the poor, including the SRD grant of 350 or 370 now, is a direct intervention to deal with poverty. We meet many people that say, I did not have a meal on the table. Today I have a meal on the table. Now we need to build from where we are, not start by saying, let's discard the past, let's talk about the future only. We've learned lessons from the past. We have made progress on the past. We now need to build a country moving forward. Now, the last point I want to make is in relation to the negative narrative. Partly the negative narrative is an albatross around black business, because in reality we've created nomenclature such as tenderpreneurs. Have you ever seen a white tenderpreneur? There can't be white entrepreneurs because our thinking is that only white people legitimately get tenders and black people are necessarily corrupt when they get tenders. It shouldn't be true.
Mr. Tau, your time is up. So we've come to the end of our session this morning. I'm going to take liberties because I think that there are a lot of people in the room. When I look at your faces, I don't know, not a mind reader, but I think I can get a sense of a crowd. I'm going to take liberties and give each of you 30 seconds. Your value proposition. Why must we vote for any of you on the 29th of May? Mr. Mdwaba, I'll kick it off with you.
Again, hi, boss. Okay, so corruption destroys freedom. I've demonstrated how we are not theoreticians in this space. We are practitioners. We've done it time and again. The anti-corruption courts. Unemployment, we have a plan, ecosystems, policies that we implement by people who know what they're doing, taking poverty on the chin and hitting it out of the park. Crime, safety, gender-based violence, and jailing criminals is very, very key.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, we are saying that key towards rescuing this country and fixing it, it's growing the economy. And growing the economy means that we need to make sure that we deal with lawlessness. But we are saying to South Africans, we all say so many things as political parties, manifestos and everything. Don't judge us by what we say. Judge us by what we do. And we are saying, give us and borrow us your vote for 5 years. Borrow us your vote for 5 years, and then
All right.
judge us by the actions that we have taken. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Kathy, when you strip the problem to its bare bones, we've got a leadership problem in South Africa. Whether you're talking corruption, the quality of the ideas we have on the table, or the choices that we make from a policy perspective, those are all leadership problems and leadership choices. And that's why we say we need new leaders. And Rise Mzansi's vision, I believe, is compelling. It's got the granularity we need to start solving the real problems instead of rhetoric about the past.
All
and
right.
we can have a new beginning for the next 30 years.
Thank you, Kathy. People must vote the IFP. We will do things differently. We don't make empty promises. The promise we make is our commitment to the people of South Africa. We believe that in order to create a stable community, create an environment that is safe, that will be able to attract foreign investors and make the economy to grow, safety will be a key.
Thank you, sir.
The purpose of our existence as the African National Congress is to liberate black people and historically disadvantaged people from the yoke of their historic subjugation. And therefore, our primary agenda remains fundamental socio-economic transformation in this country. That's why we exist, and that's our value proposition. When we're talking about growing the economy, industrialization, we say the other side of the coin, not a different coin, the other side of the coin is transformation. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, can we please give all our panelists a warm round of applause? Thank you all for your participation in this conversation. And thank you to you as our panelists and also for your engagement. I did promise to be on my best behavior today, and I think I kept my promise too. On that note, these are just some of the options that you have on the 29th of May. Think carefully, choose wisely.
Thank you so much to our moderator, Mem Kefi Mutakana, for driving the program so well, and to our esteemed panel. Thank you for your valuable insights and for honoring the event. We really appreciate it as the Black Business Council. And as business sitting here today, we remain hopeful that you will fix the country, our dire consequences, and our dire economic situation notwithstanding. And to you, our audience, thank you so much for those provocative and illuminating questions. To our sponsors again, thank you so much for making this event possible. WRCTA, Rand Water, ABSA, African Bank, Anglo-American, IDC, EBSA, Vodacom Foundation, Take a Lot Group, 24-hour, 27-4, I beg your pardon, National Empowerment Fund, CITA, and DISO. We've gone a bit over time, but we could not stop the session, as we all agree that it was a very interesting, and exciting engagement. And I think it speaks to all of us who are South Africans, only have one passport. This is our country. So thank you so much to our audience. We will be breaking now for coffee. It's 23 minutes past 11. 15 minutes will be, is it 22? 20 to 12, agreed. So please be on time, don't hang around for too long. There's another interesting session coming on. Thank you so much.